What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Under One Roof podcast. This week, we are talking about this important concept of expressing and receiving affection. Now, we all have this deep feeling inside of us that we want to feel loved, safe, and accepted. But the problem is we're all raised in different places, and some of us have a very difficult time showing affection and maybe even receiving affection. So how do we navigate these tensions in our marriage? How do we cultivate a marriage and a family life where we are freely creating this atmosphere of warmth? And how do we work through some of those complexities that prevent that life of giving and receiving affection? Hey guys, welcome back to the Under One Roof podcast, where we are talking about culture and discipleship in the Christian home. And we're touching on issues that span from relationships to parenting to marriage. And today's topic is kind of maybe a sensitive one. Maybe as a guy, I feel sensitive talking about it. Why do I feel a little bit insecure talking about it? Maybe insecure, maybe sensitive, I don't know. What are we talking about today?
So we wanted to kind of discuss the idea of the place affection has within a marriage or within a home, and how important affection is, and how it can be lack of affection leads to brokenness, and it shows up in different ways, but how important and central it is to grow up in a home and have a marriage that is full of affection.
Yeah.
I think something that just a lot of examples recently that I've been just kind of like, wow, kind of struck by. I'm just going to dive right into it, but...
Well, before you dive into the example, can we define it a little bit?
Sure.
Like, what do we mean by affection?
Yeah, why don't you define it?
Verbal or nonverbal, so basically affection has two expressions, two halves to it, but it's all one thing. Talking, saying, I love you, saying I'm trying to define it without using the word affection.
Without using the word, yeah.
Affectionate words of care, love, affirmation, nurture, encouragement, right? Along with touching, hugging, stroking, holding, right? All of the things that make us feel cared for and loved and accepted.
Safe.
Safe.
That we belong, that we are loved, just the warmth and safety and protection. I think everyone needs touch. Everyone needs affection. And I think there maybe is a lot of conversation about sexuality in marriage and that whole topic. But
what
I
do
think
you mean in terms of the importance of
touch
healthy
and
sexual
just
relationship?
sexuality
Yes.
and intimacy. But I think today we want to talk about non-sexual touch, specifically
in marriage.
Where it is so important to have affection, a lot of kindness in our touching, in our the way we express love.
So dive into some examples. Why are we talking about this?
I guess I'm just struck maybe by some of the feedback you've been giving me about maybe you're having a season, a stressful season, or just maybe a season of discouragement. And when you come home and you're down, and I just instinctively hug you and hold you and maybe rub your back and your shoulders and just stroke your hair, and that's just as a woman, the nurturing, motherly almost affection comes out. And it's just natural, and I don't think much about it, but later you will tell me that's really powerful. That's very encouraging. Everyone needs that. Men need that more than they will talk about. And I also wanted to kind of discuss just the whole concept maybe of how not growing up in an affectionate home can affect how people, whether they're able to be affectionate or whether they struggle to be affectionate, even with their own children, with their spouses. Sometimes it's just awkward for them. It's hard for them.
Yeah.
And I guess the example I was thinking of, we have a close friend whose mom passed away recently, and he was just sharing this thought of when she was, he's a grown man, he's got teenage kids, he's established in life, and his mother on her deathbed, he just described her putting her palm on his head, and just that motherly touch of just love, and she didn't say anything, it was just the touch. It was so powerful for him because he has his own struggles, has his own stress, but just the motherly, understanding, compassionate touch with no words, the power of that. And maybe I feel like it's not talked about enough, encouraged about enough. Maybe we have like a Slavic culture that isn't as affectionate. Not everybody, but
is it a Slavic thing because we're Slavic from background, or is it a universal thing?
it probably is
Because
a
I think in
universal
American,
thing.
I think in
Yeah.
American culture, people would say people just struggle just as much
Yes,
with experiencing the freedom of really expressing affection to one another. And there's things that prevent that freedom.
Right. And I think another example I told you that made me really think, there was some kind of interview when two men were talking, and they were like grown men, like in their 40s, 50s. And one was kind of sharing how he, with his wife or then girlfriend at the time, where he like laid his head on her shoulder and she was just like stroking his head because he was having a hard time. And he just like, he kind of jumped up and was like, this feels like I'm supposed to be the strong one for you. I don't want to ever feel weak. I don't want to feel, and because he grew up seeing men are strong, men are the leaders, they provide the strength and protection, which is good. And that is how he felt like so wrong receiving affection in the way of like the nurturing affection this woman was providing him, that he felt like it was wrong. But then later he learned that that was actually not wrong and good. And I guess, Stuffy, you've been telling me how powerful it is, and how, I guess my question to you, just to kind of get us going, is do you think as a man it is hard and vulnerable to ask for affection if you are not receiving it?
Yeah.
Say in your marriage, do you think men in general have a very hard time asking for affection and probably won't ask for affection if it's not there, but they need it? What has been your experience?
Yeah, I think it's really hard. Again, I'm not speaking for all men, and I don't think I'm a particularly callous, hard man who just isn't, I'm fairly open and relational, but still, it's hard to ask for affection as a man because you understand that your calling is to be strong. Your calling is to provide and protect. I think it's maybe confusing. I feel like I don't know what the balance is, and maybe we're just in this age where we're overthinking everything.
Yeah.
But like the balance between being a man who needs love and being a man who provides that love. The Bible calls me as a man to love my wife like Christ loved the church. That means to sacrifice myself, and to give and to protect and provide. So I think, of course, we're working with the extreme. Some men are just crybabies, and we'll get into this later maybe, it's like some men don't ever grow out of running to mommy for everything. And even after they're grown men, they are running to their mom when they're stressed out and struggling, and so maybe something's not being met there. But also, like, as a man, you shouldn't do that. You should be strong.
Yeah.
And as a man, your wife shouldn't generally feel like you're always coming home and you're just unloading all your emotional baggage on her constantly. Like, your wife shouldn't feel like she's carrying all your emotional burdens, right? So what is the balance? And I don't know. Like, I think I'm learning that. I think the other piece to that is as we grow in adulthood as men, for myself, I'm just learning this now. I think my need for affection, or maybe my understanding of its importance, or my openness for affection grows. Maybe because you just start to realize that life is so much more complicated and difficult than you thought. Maybe you start to realize that, like somebody was saying at church the other day, like, oh, I feel like the men, the older they get, the more emotional they get. Not emotional in a weak sense.
Not in an unstable way.
Not in an unstable sense.
But easily show emotion.
But showing greater emotion about things that do matter.
Right.
Like, emotional, not in the sense of being controlled by your emotions, but emotional in the sense that you feel deep things. But then when I look at the Bible and I look at the men in Scripture who are definitely manly men, Apostle Paul is a manly man, and yet he is showing such deep affection for people in their writings. They're on the beach at Ephesus, about to board the ship, and it says they embraced and they cried. together and they prayed, like with the elders. So I think as a man, you grow and you start to feel deep things because life is deep. Life is both scarier and more difficult than you thought, and more beautiful and more precious than you thought. And so I think as you grow and you're like, how do I express, this need? And sometimes you feel insecure about that. And like that video of that man who's like, am I allowed as a man to put my head on your lap and need your touch? And it's like so powerful.
Yeah.
Maybe in the past I didn't need that. It's not like I was
feels like you've become more comfortable with just receiving it. I just remember early in our marriage, like you would get sick and I wanted to like take care of you and like bring you tea in bed and like you're fevering and you're like, I'm okay, I'm not dying. Like you're very like, I'm strong just because I'm like, you're very much not the man. Like there's this cliche like, oh, the man flu guy who's complaining. You've never been the man who you'll be really sick and you're not complaining. You're just like, it's okay, I'm fine. Like you're very much strong. But to allow me to like, in my own womanly, feminine, nurturing way, like comfort you or encourage you with like just compassionate touch, like holding and hugging. And you're actually a very affectionate man from the beginning, like with our kids. Like
I'm you grew very up touchy. With our family was very touchy.
Grew up in
lots of hugs, lots of kisses.
Yes, which is very beautiful. I think it's very healthy. But can you speak into maybe men who didn't grow up, or even women who didn't grow up in an affectionate home? They were never given, they never received affection to the level that maybe others did. Yeah. And so for them, it's very, very awkward to be hugged or held or touched by even their spouse or their kids, and they don't know how to give love.
And I think, so it's God's design. Touch and love and hugging is God's design. It's like research shows that the most important thing that a baby needs is to be on her mom's breast right there, the moments of skin to skin, the moment that the baby is born. Like, and babies need to be rocked by human beings, not by cribs. Babies need, like that's babies, but it's not just babies, like human beings. We're created this way. We're physical embodied creatures. We need love, we need care. And the reality of living in a broken world is that a lot of us don't receive that growing up. And that's sad. That's painful. And what that also means is maybe you know it, and maybe you then don't know how to express that, or you don't know how to ask for it.
Do you think maybe sometimes we just label it as like, well, I'm just not a touchy person. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not. Some people are less touchy than others.
I think it is true, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with, some people are very touchy and some people are not. We all are on some kind of spectrum of comfort, and that's totally fine. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. What I think becomes a problem is when you're not actively thinking through like, hey, actually, like my family needs my affection.
Yeah.
I think sometimes in women, lack of nurturing affection is very weird. Not to like put shame or judge, but I think it's something you must cultivate. A mother has to be affectionate, and not just towards her children, but a wife must be affectionate towards her husband, because he is also a man. Though he is very strong and your leader and your protector and your safety, he has struggles and burdens that he needs to feel he can have a place to just feel loved and safe and affectionate, or receive affection.
Yeah, it's interesting because Genesis chapter 2 shows you the creation order, and the woman is created at the center of the garden as the one who is the life giver, the nurturer, the one who beautifies the garden, the one who perfects creation. And there's something really powerful in that picture, that at the center of the garden, that's your home. At the center of the garden is the woman and her beauty and her love and her life-giving presence. Part of that life-giving presence is affection. And that's how God designed. And again, that doesn't mean all of us are going to be automatically perfect at that. Because on the flip side, in the New Testament, Paul says that husbands are supposed to love their wives like Christ loved the church and gave himself for her and washes her with the word and with the truth. So we're all called to demonstrate this affection and cultivate it. It has to be intentional in my family, in my home. Me hugging and kissing my kids constantly is very intentional and direct. It's not just something that I'm just doing mindlessly. I want my home to be a place where there's lots of hugs and kisses. Now, that we might have some diversity in that.
Yeah.
So I think this is something we all have to learn and cultivate. And I think, so this is really important to ask yourself, did I grow up in a place where this is normal? And do I have tendencies in myself that are just, I have to grow in this and develop it? And do I have a discomfort about giving or receiving affection? Am I insecure about that? Some women don't have that. And so like, what do? Well, you learn, you just hug. You just need to understand how much your kids and your husband needs your affection. Men, the same thing. You just need to understand how much your wives and your kids need your affection.
Would you say that for like as a man, say you're a woman who is not very affectionate towards her husband, maybe towards the kids, but towards the husband it's not as easy to give like loving touch. And the husband will never ask. Like I'm assuming for men it's very hard to be like, can I have a hug? I mean, for women it's a lot easier. For me, I don't know. Maybe not all women will ask for affection.
Yeah.
But when I need a hug, I will just come and get it from you. I don't need to like suffer in silence.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing for men it's a lot harder to ask, and they probably will never ask. So is it safe to say that like women need to develop this if this is not something that you're good at naturally? To instinctively be nurturers means to learn to be affectionate.
Yeah.
And what kind of moments especially that do you think men need affection, and how? You were just saying it's very powerful in specific moments.
And again, I can't speak for all men. I think sometimes men don't want to be hugged and touched. And so that's like, I would say to that man who never wants to be hugged by his wife or like caressed, I would ask him the question like, hey, do you think there's something behind that? Maybe you should dig that a little bit. Again, we all have a different range, but all of us need this, right? And what is the reason? I feel insecure. I feel weak. I feel this. Like, you don't have to be feeling like you need to prove how tough you are all the time. Like, if you're a strong man, your family already knows it, right? And when you're really stressed and struggling, sometimes you need that support and love of your wife, and you need to receive that and welcome that. And don't be the man who's always like, I don't need this. Again, I'm not gonna like, everybody's a little different in this, but for women to know that when men are very stressed out, again, I'm not speaking for all men, have that conversation, ask questions in your marriage. Hey, what helps you? What helps you feel?
Also, maybe the moment of high stress, say you're dealing with a client on the phone, it's not the time I need to come give you a hug, but if it's a season of stress, maybe I need to be like turning up the warmth of affection extra and just...
Yeah, when a man is sitting in the evening, and this is a season of difficulty at work maybe, or in life or in family or whatever, and he's just down. And sometimes the wife gets uncomfortable with the fact that he's down. She wants him to always be strong or whatever. Yeah. For her to know that sometimes he just needs love. That it's okay. Like, a man will be a man when he is supported, loved, and when the woman believes in him, he will go out there and fight. But sometimes he has moments where he's sitting there, and he's just sitting by the campfire, tired of the battle. And that's okay too. That's understandable. And that moment, he needs just affection and care and love. And I think wives need to be available always with love and care. I think that's very helpful. Again, in every marriage, you should discuss how that works better for you. I'm not like imposing, but I think overall men want their wives to be affectionate, loving women, not like women who are always want something or have always some sort of requirement or always have some sort of answer for him or always another request from him. A man needs to feel like he doesn't have to be afraid to be weak. And no man wants to always be weak. Some men are just crybabies and they're going to be weak all the time. And that's different.
Right.
But all men, I think deep down want to feel like, some moments I'm just done. And those moments, if I really act this, if I show how low I am, will that scare her off?
Yeah. Yeah.
Will that make her insecure? Will that
Yeah.
make her question me? Will that make her see me differently? I know you have like cared and like always shown that affirmation that I don't have to worry about making you believe in me. And so I can express when I'm feeling really low. And it's extremely nurturing and empowering in those moments, you know?
Do you think maybe sometimes when a man grows up in a home with a mother that is very affectionate and marries a woman who's lacking, like, I think there's this whole thing of like mama's boys, and I think that's a real problem. But I also wonder if when the only place you receive affection is from your mom, you're always going to want to go back to the place where you feel safe and loved and accepted. And I think as women, I think it's really important, if you're not naturally an affectionate person, and maybe you are towards your babies and your children, but towards your husband, maybe you've tried and he's kind of been like, I'm strong, I don't need that. You know, I think it's something that I'm seeing how powerful it is. And I think women tend to be natural nurturers. But if you are not, as a woman, I think it's still, would you say it's safe to say, continue cultivating this? And don't just be content with being like, well, my husband doesn't need that. He's not that kind of man. Or like, you know, people are like, oh, I don't need to baby my husband. Well, it's not babying him. It's creating a nurturing space where he can kind of like just, you know, let go and be weak sometimes.
So there's a balance here in the sense that you don't want the wife to always be like, oh, kids, look how poor daddy is. Look how tired he is. Look how tired and worn out. Look how hard he works. No,
there's a way to overdo that.
I don't
for sure.
want a pity party every time I come home because because that's going to make the family view dad as a weak, tired man. I don't want that. And I'm not like, that's not what I want to project to my family. So if I am like, okay, babe, if I'm acting like this, then please tell me, because that's not, I want to, so there's that extreme. But I think that a woman can exalt her husband and say, wow, thank you so much for all the work you do. And you work so hard for our family. And I love you so much. And I know you get tired, and that's okay too. And it's kind of like, you know, in sexual intimacy, in a healthy marriage, you're not always needing to work hard to get sexual intimacy. It should be readily available for both. Like, and it's not something that you constantly, okay, well, if we're gonna, you know, I got to do this and this and this, I got to make it right. I have to jump through hoops. I think with affection, it's the same thing. Affection in the Christian home should be readily available every day. All the time.
It shouldn't even be asked for. It should just be, I just think when you have to ask for something, it kind of loses its right.
So you need can you please apologize for that? That's useless. Like asking for an apology, you know?
It should be something that is just, it's almost like intuition. Like you see he's down, you see your kids are feeling discouraged. Like, just have that loving touch and I guess the other question, I remember listening in a podcast or something recently, we were talking about it, how maybe the way that when you grow up without receiving affection, like good non-sexual touch, that like the kindness of a father or a mother, as boys grow up, they tend to seek for that somewhere else, whether they're sleeping around, they still need human touch. And a lot of times they'll go find it in places that are very terrible. And women, same thing. They'll go find the affection and the attention from men, or they'll read all sorts of romance books, and they'll find ways to still get it. But the answer is if you create an atmosphere in a home where it's readily available and you always can get a hug and you are loved and you will be just safe and warm.
Well, and I think this is also like, we heard this in a podcast somewhere years ago, where you're observing how little girls behave at the family gathering. And if your daughter is constantly like sitting on your grandpa's lap, uncle's, like she's always draping herself on other men in the room, needing for affection, that girl looks like she's not properly loved by her dad.
Right.
If she is fully loved and shown affection as a girl in her home by her father, and he is close to her and he fills her tank, she is not going to go looking for that affection elsewhere. And I'm not saying this as an absolute rule. Of course, women still grow up, young women broken in their lives, even if you love them well. But a lot of young women who are out there doing horrible things with their lives and giving their body to a bunch of men who don't care are women who weren't loved affectionately by their fathers.
Right.
And so they went running around the world looking for that affection. And the same thing for men. A lot of pornography has to do, again, this isn't the only cause, but one of the causes that leads men into pornography is a false desire for affection. And it's weird because it's not even affection, it's a screen. But there's something affectionate about probably like viewing that material that makes you feel safe. And so this is one of the things that you see repeatedly men talk about why is it that when they have marriage tensions and struggles, or when they feel like their wife is critical, they have more temptation to go look at pornography. Again, that's still a sin. That's inexcusable.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's not just about sex. It's about affection and about feeling safe. And this is how they've developed and cultivated in their broken way. They've developed this as a false, broken pathway for affection. And so it's not just about his self-control. It's about also creating the space in your marriage and in your family where there's that affection always, the tank is full all the time, you know? So, and I think so that's what we have to understand is when you don't give proper affection, there's going to be a great temptation to look for that affection elsewhere, you know?
And it will be broken, and a lot of times it is sexual, versus when it's properly in its proper place, human touch, non-sexual, very kind and loving. It creates safety and it creates a bond it meets the need that we all have to be held, to be loved. And I think that's really important. I remember just recently, as you're talking, like a few years ago, I met this woman who said, she was just telling me about this previous relationship she had. It was a really toxic relationship and they ended it. But she said it was very weird. This man was a very intense, toxic, semi-abusive, like strong guy she was dating. But the times where he most loved her and was most kind was when she was able to be almost like motherly to him. In her, like, he was going through a really hard time and she was just very like affectionate and like would like hold him and just hug him in a non-sexual way. Like, and she said it wasn't about the physical intimacy. It was just about affection that he never got from his mom. And he even told her that, like, this is why I was so drawn to you, because you were, in your feminine nurturing, you created a space for me that I never received in my entire life. Nowhere in the world could I find that. And so it's just the power of that, I think, to make sure that in your marriage you are being affectionate, and same with husband towards wives, you know, like loving and hugging and touching, and just, and your kids as well, that they always receive that kind touch as you're passing your kids by, you know, pat them on the head, like touch their sweet little cheeks. Like that should just be, every interaction should be one of affection.
Yeah.
So that it's not something that they get rarely and it becomes awkward.
Yeah. And this is like a really sensitive issue because, you know, some people are growing up in very broken places, and you got to understand this is going to take some work.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be that simple. And if you're that wife, if you're that husband who really struggles with this area, get some help. Like, talk to a healthy, godly pastor who can help counsel through some of these issues, who can help you uncover, because this is central. It's kind of, maybe sometimes the stuff we talk about are just like, yeah, put salt on your food, duh. Like, but we have to sometimes zoom in the lens on some of the basic fundamental things and ask yourself, like, okay, what is the weather? Like, we can say so many good things about our house as a family, but like some of the key things, like, is our home a very affectionate place? There could be a lot of truth, a lot of good things, ministry, family, teaching, prayer, like Bible, like everything. But okay, but still, at the bottom of everything, was there lots of affection and love and care? Is it a warm and safe place? And for people who are even raised in that, you still have to be intentional. You still have to bring that. And for those people who have had really broken upbringings, don't think that this is a simple solution, but I think the hope is that there's definitely resolution. I think one example we were talking about, another man kind of was saying, some couple was sharing that this person, he was raised in a family where there was very little affection, and he knew that. And getting married, he kind of said, hey, I was raised in a home where there was very little affection in my family, and in our family it's going to be different. We're going to hug, we're going to be kissing our kids and telling them we love them and patting them on the head, and like, we're going to be an affectionate family. And so that's the beauty of it, is when you're building your family, you can't naively think, well, I'm just going to break free from everything I was raised in. No, you're going to have to work through stuff. You're not just going to easily break free from the sins and struggles of your upbringing. Have some humility to acknowledge it's going to take work for you to work through that. However, the hope is your kids don't know how you were raised. They just know you.
Yeah.
And there's something very powerful about the fact that you do get to build a family. And you get to direct it, and you get to build something new. And sometimes we think about, oh, we're not like this, and we should be more like this. And we think so much about how we're not and what we should be, versus acknowledging the beauty of God gave us this responsibility to build a marriage and to build a family. And today we're doing it. And if there's something we got to adjust, let's adjust it today. Yeah. And it's like flowing water. It's a flowing stream, and you get to direct it. And that's kind of scary, but it's also wonderful, because God's grace heals generational pain. God's grace is present today. If you in humility be like, yeah, we want to be more like this as a family. We need God's Spirit to work in our home. It's not just psychology. This is the Spirit of God making our home a place of love and care. And we can do that today.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone, maybe to finish, if they really want it? Say it's a wife who really was like, I need more hugs. I need you to sometimes hold my hand. I need you to comfort me. But
yeah,
he just says, I wasn't raised that way. I don't know how. I don't, or maybe a husband who needs that, obviously, but isn't going to ask for it. Like, what do you do when your spouse grew up in a home where that was never demonstrated, so they almost don't have the language or the ability?
Yeah.
How do you start those conversations?
I think the biggest thing is just humility. We as men, we just don't like it. But this is just so dumb. Like, I think what I love about you is you're just so simple. Like, in your humble, like when you're having a tough day, in humility, you're just like, I just need a hug. Like, you're not being condescending. You're not being angry or demanding. You're just being open and honest and humble. And as a man in my brokenness, I still have to be like, oh, do I not hug you enough? Like, every request turns into a criticism. It's like, It's not about you, bro. Like, just take the simplicity of like, hey, I'm a man, yes, but I'm also learning. And there's a lot that I have to learn, and that's okay. Just because I'm not doing this one thing as well as I should be does not mean I'm a failure as a man, does not mean I'm a weak man or a foolish man or whatever. And just be open to learn. We are all in the trenches, and we're all learning how to be men. And if you can have that in your marriage, where you're just not afraid to say, hey, I just really need more of this. And even for men to share that with their wives, like for a wife to be like, we just all need humility and openness. If your husband tells you he just needs more care from you, more hugs, more nurturing, if he's saying that, I'll just say most likely that is one of the most
vulnerable
difficult things for him to say. Because as a man, when you say that, you are, it's just hard. You feel weak saying something like that. And of course, if he's not the type, if he's not the kind of man who's always complaining and moaning and whining and saying, please, hug me more. But if he's a man who generally just works hard and does stuff, and then he says this, it's really hard for him to say this. And just receive it with grace, and don't make it about yourself. We're all learning,
Or more likely that no man will ever say that. So just go ahead and learn to be affectionate regardless, right? Yeah. I think it's unlikely
or
that
asking
man,
this. Be the one to ask.
Or ask.
Hey, as a husband, as a wife, do you feel like I am affectionate enough? Or do you think I can grow in this? Yeah. And don't make those questions traps, because sometimes sometimes it's a trap. Like if I tell you honestly, you're going to be offended, you're going to cry, and it's going to be this whole thing. I'm a terrible mother, I'm a terrible wife. And so I can't really be honest. Like, again, we have to be the kind of people who, when you ask, hey, honey, can you tell me, am I doing well in this area? That we're open to it and we're not just looking for affirmation.
Right. And also if you recognize like, oh man, I'm not good at this. Like I maybe as a wife, maybe you focus too much on like, like physical intimacy to make sure you're like meeting your husband's needs, but like the non-sexual touch, is absent. There's nothing really there.
Right.
Like maybe just very bare minimum. And especially when he's going through some discouragement to be, so just like maybe it's awkward for you, or like maybe as a man, if with your kids, like it's awkward for you to be like cuddly with your daughters and your sons, but just let it be awkward for a while. I think there's a season it's going to be awkward, but then it's going to become very normal and it'll be a good thing for your family.
Yeah. And also I would just say, like, talk to married people around you who you see doing it well.
Yeah.
Like, I think for me, that's a big principle. If things that I'm trying to learn as a husband, I'm going to go find a man who's a bit older and who I see he's doing this well. Yeah. He's got a track record of doing this well. I'm just going to ask him, hey, how do you do this? Have you grown? Just seek for wisdom, it's huge. So I think again, maybe that sounds like a very simple thing, but if we all start on that place of, hey, I'm learning, I'm growing, and don't get defensive when your wife tells you, hey, I just need more touch from you. I need more hugs and I need more affection because I just don't know. Like, you tell me you love me once a week and that's good. No, it's not. That's not how we're wired as human beings. And having the humility to accept that and be like, yeah, I didn't really grow up doing this well and I can learn. That's okay. Yeah. And even how we pose those questions, I think we say this a lot. I know you don't mean to, but this is how it sometimes feels. Yeah. I know you don't mean to, but it seems like you have a hard time maybe showing affection, or I know you love me, but I need to have more hugs from you as my husband, because that's how I feel that more, And I'm not saying you don't love me. I know you do love me, but so we all can think of ways to say that in a way that's more, encouraging. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful to you guys. I think that's been an ongoing conversation for us. We're all growing, we're all learning, and we're all trying to shoot for having a marriage. We're all trying to build a marriage and a family life that is nurturing and caring and loving, and we're never really done.
Yeah, we're always growing, always learning.
Yeah. So, but that's the joy of living in Christ, is the fact that I'm changing doesn't mean that I'm not worth it or that I've failed. Like, discipleship is practice every day, and it is a huge delight to be able to build a Christian home, not because we're perfect, but because we're failing every day, but God is teaching us, and that openness creates the warmth, creates the love that we're looking for. So thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for watching. For those of you guys who are on YouTube, please comment below if this was helpful. Let us know what you thought. If you have any follow-up questions, let us know if you struggle with this in your life or upbringing, or figuring this out in your marriage. What was helpful in your marriage, for cultivating deeper affection for each other and expressing that. Thank you again for listening. Share the show, like, comment. That just helps other people find the show better. And we will talk to you guys again soon.